Chava and Adam, Chava and Sarah and Noach. So to be able to understand that, he introduced the concept of Simcha, how crucial it is to serve the Eibishter out of Simcha. Now in the Maamar, after introducing the importance of Simcha, he's going to go on further about why is this so. First he brought that it is so. Then he's going to bring the concept of why we must have Simcha. Why is this necessary? Why is this obligatory? So we're holding, I said, about 2/3 of the way down on the third page. And the line begins Be'inyan HaSimcha. I'm sorry, not 2/3, about 1/3 of the way down, or almost halfway down. The line begins Be'inyan HaSimcha Dafke. So at the period. So he explains, the idea behind this is, why is it so vital and important and crucial to serve Hashem out of joy, like we brought all the different proofs about this in yesterday's part of the Maamar. The ultimate purpose of the creation is it's Hashem's desire to have a home down here below. Specifically, when we use the term home denotes a connection with the essence. The idea of a home indicates the drawing down of the very essence of Hashem, because the difference between when a person is at home or a person is somewhere else is when he's at home, he lets himself be himself. He doesn't have to put on a show. It's not something that he covers who he really is. So a person is with his entire being at home. So same thing when Hashem wanted to have a home down here below, that means that he wanted the essence. Now, once we've established that the Dir B'Tachtoinim is about Hashem wanting to have his essence over here, so here it can be understood the idea of Simcha. Drawing down Hashem's essence is specifically through joy, not through understanding and comprehension, only through joy. And the Rebbe brings an example of this, that we see this in davening. It's in the matter of davening that tefillah hi avodah. Tefillah is our service to Hashem. On the pasuk avatem b'chol levavchem, you shall serve Hashem with all your heart. So the Chazal say, what type of avodah do you do with your heart? So he says that's davening. So in davening we can see this contrast between the concept of understanding versus simcha. He's going to say. He says, there are two components, two aspects. There is the understanding and comprehension part of davening, that a person contemplates on Hashem and understands godliness. And then there's simcha v'tainug, there is joy and delight that he derives from Hashem. His joy with and in Hashem that the person experiences during davening. So the Rebbe says, of these two things, one is a stepping stone to the other. The understanding and the comprehension, in other words, the contemplation, the izbonenus that a person has, is only a vessel and preparation for my joy in Hashem that I experience in davening, my delight in Hashem that I experience in davening. The primary service of davening is my joy and my delight that I have in Hashem. Though the comprehension, understanding, and the joy and the delight come together, come simultaneously, they're not two distinct times, let's say, in davening. When a person understands and comprehends something, he delights in it. They are distinct and different in their matters and from their perspective, their root. The understanding and comprehension does not grasp the level of Hashem's essence. How come? Why does that understanding not grasp Hashem's essence? He says the Avon of Asaga with Seichel, because understanding, comprehension is the idea of intellect. First of all, the intellect down here, in other words, intellect of any creation, even the most lofty intellect, is incomparable to the intellect of above. And he's going to give an example from something on a similar vein, that the way it is down here is incomparable to above. Like it says about Avraham Avinu, for I am dust and ashes. So Chassidus explains, we have this in Tanya, the Midas HaChesed Avram Ein Berach Klal, the Midas HaChesed Shalom Mayl. Though Avraham Avinu was a Merkava, and he was a divine chariot to the divine, and he had Chesed down here below, but he said that I am like dust and ashes in comparison to the Chesed of above. And Alter Rebbe explains this in detail. When you have ashes, the ashes are essentially the same substance as the wood that was burnt. But it's definitely incomparable when you have a full-grown tree to ashes that come after it. The same thing, the Chesed of Avram is something that came from the Chesed of above of Hashem, but it's incomparable. Now, if this is by Avraham Avinu, the Zen, Avraham Avinu, this is what's said by Avraham Avinu. How much more so by a person that's davening? That his level of intellect is incomparable at all to the level of intellect above. The Bechinas Haseichel Shalamayla, when we talk about Hashem's intellect, the Chabad Atzilus, for example, that the way it comes down eventually from Chabad Atzilus, let's say, comes down through a chain descent, comes down the human intellect. But that transition, it changes the very, if you will, substance of it. Like again, like the example of the tree that's burnt in a fire, and then afterwards you have only ashes left. It's the tree, but it's completely different. That the intellect of above, through much chain descent and levels, it comes in a change of the very being. Just like from the mid of Chesed of above came down below by the chain descent, the mid of Chesed of Avram in a change of its very being, and that's why he said he likened himself to ashes. The Mela move on, therefore it's understood, being that our intellect is incomparable to anything like the intellect of above. So it's understood that the comprehension that a Yid has in davening and the understanding cannot grab hold, cannot grasp Hashem's essence. Something, though, that could grasp Hashem's essence is ki'im b'chinas simcha v'tainug dafka, specifically our joy that we experience in davening and our delight in davening, specifically that shebezem mizgala b'chinas hatainug shalamayla. In that is revealed the delight of above. Hashem's delight manifests and connects in our delight down here. Different than the seichel of Hashem and our seichel down here, which changes in when it comes to delight, it can come down into our delight. Similar to the idea that when it comes to the makifim, to the keser, we say there's a special line of ishtalshalos that, let's say, goes from keser, the ak, for example, to keser the atzilus, to keser the bria, and so on, that bypasses the whole seder ishtalshalos, doesn't go through tzimtzumim, and essentially, in the keser of the lower levels, is to be found the higher levels. This is why, like we spoke one of these days, the past, that when we talk about atik, on the one hand, and then all of a sudden he's talking about atzmos, because the kesers are really like one one and the same. Though there's different levels, top of page 129, they have their own chain descent, that it's all one. So the question is, what's the difference between Hishtalshalus of, let's say, Seichel and Hishtalshalus of Tainuk? So the Rebbe is going to explain it makes a difference whether it's a Hishtalshalus of the things that are Pnimim or Mamal Kalam versus Hishtalshalus of Makifim, which is Soiv Kalam. So he says at the top of the page, the Mamal Kalam, and when we deal about Seder Hishtalshalus and Mamal Kalam, in Yaidei HaHishtalshalus, Boba B'Shinai Mehus, through the Seder Hishtalshalus, it comes about in a way of a change of the very being itself, as opposed into the Hishtalshalus of the Kesser. Though also on the level of the Makifim, the literally circles. There's Kesser is Makif to Atzil's B'ri Tzirasiyah. Ak is a Kesser that's Makif the entire Kav, etc., etc. So there's certain differences between them. The Gamba Makifim Eshchelukim Madregis, also on the levels of Makif, there's different levels. Still in all, the Ksarim come one from another, that they maintain their, if you will, integrity, that they remain the same thing. So therefore, so too, in the joy and the light that a Yid experiences in davening, that in the delight down here below is revealed the delight of above. So therefore, that is where we have the home for the Eibishter down here below. In our understanding of him, it's not really a home for him because his very essence does not come down in our understanding. His essence cannot be grasped by our understanding. But in the delight and joy in davening, that comes down, his very delight, his very essence comes down. So now the Rebbe is going to add, so how do we reach this level of simcha, or what's a important foundational thing for simcha? So second paragraph in 129, the vessel for simcha, the vehicle for joy, is the level of bit. Since the nature of simcha is that it breaks through barriers, so therefore it's even though that's a positive thing in general, but in some situations, it can be and manifest itself in breaking out of correct and appropriate barriers. By much chain descent, it's possible for this to be that the klippus, the external ones, should nurse. Similar to what's brought down, the Rambam brings us down that by, let's say, Simchas Beis HaShoeva, they used to appoint guards, or by the Yom Tovim, they used to appoint guards that the Simcha should not get out of hand and Chas v'Sholom go beyond the realms and limitations of the Torah. Why specifically when there's a time of Simcha? Why not any other time? Because that's the nature of Simcha. It's Poiris Geder. It breaks through barriers, which it has its positives, but if it's not, doesn't have an underlying bittul to discipline that, so then it can break out and come and have that the klippus should be able to latch onto it. What is the bittul supposed to negate? When the simcha is such a way that one senses and is aware that he is senses and he feels himself that he is joyous and that he is delighting. His delight is because this is something I'm enjoying. So there's an emphasis on self. Once there's an emphasis on self, then with much chain descent, there could be that the external ones should nurse from it. Similar to what's explained in concerning what it says that this is an expression used by Avraham Avinu, that is Pelegish, his concubine, her name was Re'uma. So Chassidus brings down that Re'uma is Shua Klippas Noiga Atzilus. There's the Klippas Noiga of the world of Atzilus. The Re'uma, the name Re'uma can be divided who Re'uma. See the Ma. We know Ma shows on Bittul, and that's the whole idea of Atzilus, the Bittul Tashem. But there is a type of manifestation of this Bittul, an awareness, a pointing to the Bittul. The Afshu bottle, though he's nullified, Avla Bittul b'murgish, but the Bittul is such a thing that's felt and sensed. As we can umweisen the Bittul, he could point out the Bittul. Shezeu Re'uma, this idea of seeing the Ma. The Oz, in the Afshu b'Atzilus lo yigur chara, though not Atzilus, we say, no bad will live there, meaning that the entire Atzilus is different than Bia. Bia has some yesh in it, but Atzilus is v'hu bebittel. But still in all, even though it's Atzilus, it's totally good, it's totally bottled. Since the bittel is something that there is an awareness and a sense of it, therefore it's called Klippas Noiged Atzilus, though even Klippas Noiged Atzilus is not bad, because lo yigur chara. But eventually, it starts the ball rolling. From a much chain descent from the Klippas Noiged Atzilus. Even though it's still good, eventually can come down from that the Klippas Noiged of the world of Asiya. That the Klippas Noiged of Asiya is the linchpin, the hinge, the connector between Kedusha and total bad. So that's how low the Klippas Noiged of the world of Asiya is, because after Bri Yitzir Asiya, there comes the Gimel Klipsat Meis. How does the Gimel Klipsat Meis follow from Kedusha? Because there's Klippas Noiged in between. And that possibility came from Klippas Noiged of Atzilus. That was good. It was bottled, but it was a sense of bittul. So just like when it comes to bittul, the sense of bittul can be in a way of a negative. So too, it's in the matter of joy. When the simcha is in such a way that he senses the simcha, since simcha breaks through barriers, with much chain descent, it's possible for the external ones to nurse. But when the simcha is in a state of bittul, then it's impossible that this should result in the external ones nursing from it. That's why the vessel and the vehicle for joy is specifically bittul. When the simcha is in the way that it's sensed, there could be from this the nursing of the external ones, like we said. Since it's possible that the external ones could nurse, so this shows us, this is an indicator already. Even before any klippa started getting anything from it, when it's still in the level of kedusha, it's also inappropriate. Therefore, when the simcha is in a way that there's a sense of self, so then the joy is not in an appropriate manner. That's why the vessel for simcha is specifically bittul. This means because through the bittul the simcha is an appropriate simcha. It cannot be from this the nursing of the klippas, the external ones. So now he's going to explain more, but how do the two go together? And even more so, how simcha actually is how bittul is actually responsible for the simcha, not just that it's a vessel to make sure to contain it and to be done the right way. It says on the next paragraph, this is what the Frierdiker Rebbe explains in the Maamar titled that the humble ones will increase in Hashem simcha. Shaidei anova megim l'simcha. Through humility, one reaches simcha. The lechura nifla davar. Seemingly, this matters a wonder. Harei anova v'simcha im based nuis hafchiyas. Humility and joy are two opposites in a person's character. Anova yat nur the kivutz. Humility means the person is in a state of constraint, in a state of discipline. In Yiddish, we say fakvetcht. The person is introverted and doesn't make themselves known, doesn't expand, etc. On the other hand, v'simcha yatnua, the spashas v'yisrach was joy is an idea of expansion, expansiveness, spreading out, etc. Since there are two opposite type of characteristics, it's not understood how specifically through humility a person will arrive and come to joy. The idea behind this is the inyan anava. What's the idea of humility? It's not that he's not aware of his level, his quality, his worth. He knows exactly what he is, what his qualities are, what his advantages are. Like we know the Frierdiker Rebbe says, just like a person needs to know his deficiencies, a person needs to know his qualities. It doesn't turn him into a whole mitzias, a whole being. He's look who I am. Why? How could that be? If I know all my qualities, I should be like, overcome with myself. He says on the top of page 130, because he considers that all the qualities that he has, it's not by his own capabilities, it was given to him from above. The Mishumza, for this reason, though he knows what his qualities and advantages are, still always in a state of bittul. And the example of this is that Moshe was the most humble person from anyone and before anyone upon the face of the earth. So was Moshe oblivious to everything he did? He went up on Har Sinai, received the Torah, he split the sea, he did the Makkos, etc., etc. He brought the man down, all these things. He wasn't oblivious. He didn't know what he accomplished. He knew very well what he accomplished and who he was. The Moshe knew his qualities. But rather he thought that this is not by his own effort. This is a gift from above. And in a similar vein, a person could look at his own types of gifts that he has, that it's also a gift from above. Just another few lines. So too, by every single person, his advantages and his qualities are inherited from our forefathers. The fact that a Yid believes in Hashem, so this is not his own doing. This is like Chazal say, Yidin are maminim b'nei maminim. They're believers, children of believers. So he inherited from Avraham Avinu. Like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that the love that a Yid has, the innate love, is inherited from Avram. That the fact that he has this innate and concealed love. And this concealed and innate love, it's included also awe and other matters. All the matters that are within him are inheritance from Avraham Avinu. And therefore, even though he knows of his own advantages and his qualities, he's still in all in bittul. And based on this concept, tomorrow we will explain why this then leads him and is a vessel and a stepping stone to Simcha.